Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Musgrove, joined by John Gibson. It is Thursday, so it's time for the match preview. Newcastle welcome West Ham to St James's Park on Saturday evening, an evening kick-off 5:30. And they, of course, go into this game on the back of securing a place in the EFL Cup final. We now know, John, they were playing Manchester United. Not that it was ever in doubt, I don't think, given Man United dominating.
No, you gave me a bit stick last time for presuming or tempting fate, but we were there.
Well, I mean, the last episode, John, you predicted Newcastle to go through, and you predicted Man United to win the second. I didn't want you to jinx Newcastle's luck, but it appeared it was never in doubt.
No, the first leg took care of that, to be truthful, and Sean, after 4 minutes, made it an absolute formality in terms of getting through, not in terms of performance. I think some of your twitchiness rubbed off on some of the boys in the second half, but the bottom line's the bottom line, and we're there and we beat Southampton home and away. So it's turned out to be a decent few days of sunshine.
Most certainly. Just describe to me then, John, your feeling, your emotion when that final whistle went on Tuesday.
Oh, I mean, the tremendous relief. You would actually think my long wait to see Newcastle win something again, having been there in 1969, which was the last one, you would think it was actually over. And it just dawned on me afterwards that the most difficult part is still to do, which is winning the final, which I watched Newcastle not do in 74, 76, 98 and 99. But it's our first Wembley final since 1999, ironically against the same opposition. So that in itself is a wonderful thing. But of course, the bottom line is the way all bottom lines are. It's okay getting to Wembley, but you've got to win it. It's no good going there and finishing as runners-up. And in Newcastle's case, we really have to win it because we haven't been winning it. But you know what? I actually think we have a better chance this time than in any of the other Wembley finals that I've covered, because we have gone into the other Wembley finals when I was there distinctly as second best. In 74, we played Liverpool, which was the Liverpool of Keegan and Toshak and all the Emlyn Hugh, all the great players who went on to be regular European Cup winners. So we were second favourites there. Man City with Dennis Stewart was always a step too far in 76. And in 98, we played Arsenal, who were about to complete the League and Cup double. And then 99, goodness gracious, Manchester United were doing the League, the Cup, and the Champions League treble. So we were always second best, and we were second best. But this time we're not, you know. This time, Newcastle and Manchester United are locked third and fourth in the table. Both have had a huge input in positivity. Newcastle all season with Eddie Howe, and Manchester United since their new manager. And it's an even Stevens final. And, you know, I don't walk with the trepidation of previous years. It can be done. And let's go out and do that. We won't be overawed. We are. We've got the best defence by a considerable distance in the Premier League. We're a good side. So, yes, we walk with an air of jauntiness, I would think.
Yeah, nothing to fear whatsoever facing Manchester United in the final. You look at those outside of Newcastle, Peyton. This is the rebirth of Manchester United, and those people doing that seemingly are forgetting that Newcastle lie a place above Manchester United in the league table and aren't in the race for the top four out of luck. They're there out of merit. You know, they've been better than Manchester United this season for the large part of
totally.
it.
There's this obsession with Manchester United throughout the country, though, isn't it? The famous prawn sandwich brigade. I mean, Manchester United have more fans outside of Manchester than they have inside of Manchester. Because the whole of the rest of the country, whether that was going back to Munich or whatever, the whole of the rest of the country are Manchester United supporters. So all we'll hear between now and in the final at the end of the month is about, nationally I'm talking about, is about Manchester United and the rebirth of Manchester United and what that means. Well, that's fine. I want them to believe that. I want them to get complacent and think they've just got to turn up on the day, and an hour and a half later they pick up the trophy. That's great by me, because we up here know it'll be different. For a start, the first thing we'll win is the battle on the terraces. We will outshout them and be more passionate than them. Anybody that was inside St James's Park on Tuesday night, that was unique, mine. I've supported Newcastle all my life, and I've reported on Newcastle for 50 odd years, since 1966, and there has never been a better atmosphere at St James's Park than there has been all season. Not just Tuesday night, which was extra, extra, extra special, but all season. This is the best football ground in the world, not the country, for atmosphere. And didn't that show before the game on Tuesday night, when you saw all the banners, all the scarves being waved in the air? I was sitting next to Supermac, who of course played in the 76 final, and I just said to him, look at this, as the teams had walked out. And we looked round the ground at all the banners flying and the scarves being twirled. And I looked up in the gods, where Southampton had a lot of fans for the long distance to come, and they were already worn down. But of course, it was just a sea of nothingness, because there was no flags, nothing to wave. And they must have been sitting there and thinking, how on earth do we beat this team when we're worn down with this atmosphere in this game? And of course, 4 minutes later, they found out they couldn't beat them, because the first goal was in the back of the net, and then it went. But it's sensational. We will win the battle on the terraces. I just want to win the battle on the field as well.
The scarves, as the players came out, was something special. I think it brought a tear. It certainly brought a tear to my eye. I mean, I've never seen anything like that before. And fair play to everyone for getting on board and making such a spectacle of it all. You mentioned there, Sean Longstaff, of course, got the double. Just how pleased are you for him? He's had his critics. I was one of them. Shearer said that Sean needs to add more goals to his game. I think everyone agreed with that. We said in the episode earlier in the week, what a game to start that off.
Oh, I mean, I was thrilled for the lad, because he has had a tough time. He is if you take a Newcastle United 11, he probably is 11th in the terms of popularity, because you go with Bruno, you go with Pope with no goals in, you go with Botman, you go with Dan Burn. Why? Because he's got the heart the size of a frying pan. You go with Callum Wilson, etc., and you eventually get round to Sean Longstaff. But I'm delighted for him. I mean, the crowd was singing after he's one of our own, and that is why I was delighted for him, because he is exactly that. Yes, I knew his dad from way back in ice hockey days, but delighted for him. And you know why as well? I was delighted that he got the 2 goals to take us to Wembley, and he will not forget that for the rest of his life, by the way. He's got that in his locker for the rest of his life, and no feeling apart from the winner at Wembley will top that. Absolutely no way. But why I was pleased is because throughout the country, all this revival of Newcastle United is all down, supposedly, to new owners who are super rich, to splashing the cash in the transfer market, etc., etc. We haven't acted like a super rich club. Chelsea are the ones doing that, splashing the cash as if it's no tomorrow. We haven't done that. We haven't just bought, like Chelsea, anybody that's on the shelf, we'll take them in the hope to come off. The recruitment has been magnificent. But this revival of Newcastle United, for me, the most amazing part of it is not new owners, the manager, and the players brought in like Bruno and Botman and Burn and Pope. It is the players that were already here have been transformed beyond anything I could ever imagine. If you look at Joe Linton, you look at Almiron, you look at Shaw, and yes, you look at Longstaff, what has happened with them? So isn't it wonderful that we got to Wembley through 2 goals by a bloke who was already here and was part of the bad old days, and is now having his moment in the sunshine. That's terrific.
6 players, if my maths is correct, that started the game on Tuesday were here before the takeover. So that puts the supposed, Newcastle have bought their way to success argument well and truly in the bin.
Absolutely. And you've got backup like San Maximum and people like that who were here before. They didn't start the game, but were here before.
You mentioned there, Dan Burn as well. How important, John, do you think it is to have some sort of a Geordie element running through the spine of this team so they can tell the story? I mean, it already came out last week via Kieran Trippier that Dan Burn, Paul Dummett, and the likes, Sean Longstaff, were all telling the rest of the squad that this is more than just a game. How important is it to have that message, especially
without a shadow of doubt? I mean, they'll find out now. If they didn't find out on Tuesday night with the atmosphere and what it was like after the game and watching television since and reading newspapers since, they'll certainly find out when they go to Wembley. I think that is absolutely crucial. It was a key part of Newcastle when Alan Shearer was our skipper and goal-scoring centre forward. He brought that to they are one of the fans, these guys, and therefore they know what it means to us. And I mean, if you come from the outside or your Botman and Bruno come from abroad, you might think, well, what does it mean exactly, etc., etc. But in this area, it's phenomenal. Not only is it phenomenal, but our lack of success has made it extra, extra special. Because we've got a huge fan following, we haven't had the trophies to support it, and therefore the reaction. I mean, honest to God, the whole lot of them will be on top of Gray's Monument if they bring the trophy back. There's no question about that. But I was thinking on the final whistle, and I'm driving home from St James's Park, and I'm thinking, this is magnificent. I've waited for this. This is terrific. I've waited a long time for this. And then I woke up and thought, we are on the cusp of it, but we're not there. I had been thinking, well, last major trophy was 54 years ago. I was there for the European Fairs Cup win in Budapest. Well, last domestic trophy, 68 years ago, 1955. And then I suddenly woke up, Andrew, and thought, yeah, well, it's still the same if we lose at Wembley. That's why we mustn't. That's why this last step, the players deserve that step. The manager deserves that step. Let's make it. Because otherwise, you're the same as the 74 team, the 76 team, the 98 team, and the 99 team. This side is going to win things. There's nothing more nailed on than that this side and this club over the next few years are going to win things. But let's make this the first one, and it's only 3 weeks away.
We are releasing a special supplement. I've popped the link to where you can buy that from into the comments. It'll be out in time for the final. You'll have plenty of stuff in there from John to read and the rest of our team here at Chronicle Tower. So I've popped the link into the comments. Do get that bought. It's going to be a souvenir edition, and hopefully we'll whet the appetite for that Wembley final. Let's just have a brief mention about Bruno then, John, because of course his red card, no question about it. It's we cried foul about VAR, but it got the decision spot on. It was a horrendous challenge. It was a red card. Such an instrumental player, and it's kind of bittersweet, isn't it? He's not going to miss the final through the suspension, but he is going to miss the next 3 games.
Yeah,
do you take that over him missing the final?
The whole bit is a bit of a mini catastrophe because it's, you see, I've heard that, and you're right, Andrew, and people say, well, at least he ain't going to miss the final. That's great, blah, blah, blah. Of course it's great, but he's going to miss the next 3. And that's 2 ways that's bad news. First, from his point of view, he's going to go into the final never having played in February. And now, any rustiness, it doesn't matter how much he trains and it doesn't matter how much he plays in 5-a-sides or anything, he will not have played for 3 weeks before the final. That is not a good build-up to your first game back. Secondly, these 3 matches that he's going to miss matter because our season is not just about the League Cup final. It's about the fact that right now we're third top of the league and we can qualify for the Champions League. Now, the next 3 matches that he misses, there's 9 points available there. Now, if you look, it doesn't matter how well we've done this season, and we've done exceptionally well. With 3 0-0 draws, the situation is we have taken 6 points out of the last 12. That is not Champions League form by the high standard of Champions League. That is not Champions League form, 6 points out of 12. So immediately the pressure's on us. A draw's no good against West Ham. We've got to beat West Ham. Then we've got to go and beat Bournemouth, and then we owe Liverpool one. But those 3 games, 9 points, can make or break our Champions League campaign, and he misses all 3. And he is the heartbeat of the midfield. He is, because the link from back to front is the midfield, and he in there has been absolutely wonderful. Funnily enough, he always has carried that bit of devilment in him, hasn't he? You've always had the feeling that he can pass the ball silky. He's got vision. He never has blinkers on. He's got wonderful vision, but he's also got a tackle in his tank, hasn't he? I mean, he's got a bit of basic bang, bang, bang in his nature. So there's always been the possibility. And you're absolutely right. As biased as we are, when you look at that foul through VAR, it was a red card foul. There's no question about that. He wasn't badly done to. He did badly to himself and to his teammates, etc., etc. He's so wonderful, so adored that he'll be forgiven for that. But it can still cost us. If we don't get 7 points out of 9 or 9 out of 9, it's cost us. And you know, plus the fact that it's not the greatest build-up to a League Cup final. Him never having played during February.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because you're right, the season is much more than just this League Cup final. Newcastle in a great position to qualify for Europe. And do you think the fact that Man United are the team that's chasing them down, you know, on the same amount of points, you know, Man United are right on their tails, you don't want to go into that final having allowed them to get ahead of you? Because will that play some kind of tricks on the mind, you think?
Yes, I can follow that thinking totally, Andrew, and theoretically it is true. I must admit, I've tried to remain realistic about our Premier League situation all season. It's been very difficult to get carried away. I've got to keep tying my ankles down to the bedpost to make certain I don't take off during the night. So it is very difficult. But you know how I judge it? I judge it that I look at the top 4. I don't think. I know there's qualifying for the Champions League. You know, it can make a difference when you get there. But I'm not looking and saying I must be 3rd instead of 4th, or I must be. I'm thinking Man City and Arsenal will go away 1 and 2. After that, there's us and Manchester United. But you know what? I don't look at it as us and Manchester United. I look at it as us in the 5th team. I want to know the points between us and Spurs, and us and Brighton, or us and whoever's, because if I finish 4th behind Manchester United at the end of the season, having just beaten them in the League Cup final, I'll not be too just chuffed, you know, because to finish 4th would be sensational. So I want to finish 3rd. I want to finish 2nd if I can. But the big thing for me is I'm not looking at 3rd place. I'm looking at 5th place, because I want the 5th place to stay 5th and not. That would be the catastrophe. If we drop points through Bruno being out and then after the League Cup final and we finish 5th, that is the catastrophe. Finishing 5th, having been 3rd for so long. Finishing 4th isn't a catastrophe. It's wonderful.
I am going to ask you who replaces Bruno in the middle, but first off, I just want to fire some quick questions at you. So on the screen, I've put a picture on from the game on Tuesday night, and you've probably seen it doing the rounds. It is actually the picture that was originally behind me on our green screen.
Yeah.
It is Sean Longstaff dropping to his knees and then being hugged by Pope, Lascelles, and I think it's Joe Linton or St. Maximin. Can't quite see the face. But John, just talk us through that emotion in that picture.
That you look at that picture there, and that is the emotion every single Geordie, not just on Tyneside, but throughout the world, felt when that final whistle went. We have waited since 1999. We've got there, and we've actually got there with a chance of winning it on the day. And that sums up a feeling. You could have a caption to that said, a decade and a half under Ashley, one season later, we're at Wembley. Now, that's Ashley with an A and Wembley with a W, and we've gone through that whole alphabet from A to W all in 12 months, and that sums up how every Geordie feels at this stage of life. We were never expecting this so quickly. We were expecting it. We're expecting it beyond the League Cup and into Europe, but we could have the League Cup and the Champions League in one season. And that is so quick. And that is summed up by a young man who was born and bred here and has not only done that, but is living the dream every single Geordie has. We would all love to be Sean Longstaff on that picture and have scored the 2 goals to take us to Wembley. We would have felt like that. We would be crying. We were crying like that on the terraces.
I was going to ask you, John, did you shed a tear at full time?
Oh, without it, I had a lump in my throat, and I would have been embarrassed, apart from the fact that 50,000 inside the crowd were exactly the same as me. Malcolm and I stood together. It was a privilege to be standing with Malcolm because he is a Newcastle United legend and always will be. And he was one of the very few that knows what it's like to play for Newcastle in the League Cup final, 76. And we both got to our feet from the seat on the final whistle and stood in the press box watching that scene go on and watching what was happening to Longstaff and just drinking things in, looking around the ground, looking at the fans, looking at the faces of people that were so elated, so thrilled, because this is a rarity to us. Manchester United fans, they've been doing it for donkey's years, especially when Ferguson was here. It's different for them. For us, it's special.
And what I love there about that picture as well, Lascelles, captain, straight to him, Nick Pope arm around him. It reaffirms that these players know exactly what it means to a Geordie. That they're over there and they can see it's more than just a win. It's more than just a place in the final. This is, as you say, those years under Mike Ashley, all those years since the cup wins of 69 and 55. Them players that aren't Geordies fully understand what this means.
Yes, they do. But think of it another way, more personal, Andrew, and this is true as well. What does it mean to them? I mean, Lascelles, no medals. Pope went down with Burnley. A year later, he's going to be playing at Wembley, not for England, but for Newcastle United, and will get a medal guaranteed of some sort. Lascelles will get a medal guaranteed. The mighty Shearer only got runners-up medals in 98 and 99. These lads are guaranteed at least that and might have the right colour. So, if these aren't habitual, these are Man City players or Manchester United, Arsenal players of old, when Wenger and Ferguson were there, that just got bucket loads of medals. These guys are about to win medals that they never dreamed they would win with Newcastle United. Pope was on his way into the Championship. Lascelles was on his way out of the club. Longstaff a year ago thought he was going to be playing in the Championship, and now they're at the top of the tree with Newcastle United. Absolutely wonderful for each and every one of them, because they've all contributed to what Newcastle United have produced to a certain degree, some more than others, but good for them. But we're all elated. They do get the message, but just think what must be going through their minds from their point of view, the personal gains they've gained through that victory.
If through Eddie Howe over the last 12 months, been an amazing turnaround. I just want to play you this clip as well from after the game on Tuesday. I've had it on repeat for most of the week. I'm hoping you guys who maybe have already seen it won't mind watching it again, because it's quite special. I don't know, John, if you've seen it, but I'm going to play it now. So sit back and take this in.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you should run that there, Andrew. When I watched that live, when I came down from the press box to the press room afterwards. I walked straight through the press room, opened the doors, and went up on the balcony where those first shots were shot from, of the crowd walking down, singing those songs. And I watched that live before I went back into the press room for the rest of the usual things that go on in there. And it was as stirring then, but it's lovely to see again. And that is what it means to us, because that hasn't been sung since 1999. And to a whole generation, this is something completely new. I mean, to me, I can just remember that we actually won something in '69, and I was sitting there when it happened. But and as a little Ben, watching Newcastle win 3 times in 5 years in the '50s. But to a whole generation of people, this is going to be a new experience, and is already a new experience, because part of the experience, is winning the semi-final. There's nothing more wonderful than the realization when you win a semi-final that your day in the sun is actually there. That is the bonus at the end of it. But in some ways, the promise of it being fulfilled is the best feeling that it's possible to get. And that happened on Tuesday night.
Yeah, the next few weeks, people are just going to be on cloud nine. Now, the club have released details about tickets. I know loads of people were asking about how to get a ticket over the past few days, and the club have come out and they've announced what they're going to do. So let me just read through what is going to happen. So essentially, they've given priority periods to certain fans who meet certain criteria. So there are 7 periods of different criteria. People go into a ballot, and then you will be notified to whether you have got your hands on a ticket. So the first one is season ticket holders with 25 plus loyalty points and have attended at least one Carabao Cup match during this season. Then period 2, season ticket holders that have attended 4 home and at least one of the away Carabao Cup matches during this season. Period 3, season ticket holders who have attended 3 or 4 home Carabao Cup matches during this season. Period 4, season ticket holders who have attended 1 or 2 home Carabao Cup matches. Period 5, season ticket holders that have not attended a Carabao Cup match during this campaign. Period 6, members that have attended at least 1 Carabao Cup match during this campaign. Period 7, supporters with a previous purchase history that have attended at least 1 home Carabao Cup match during this season. There are various dates in which, if you fit that criteria, you will have a chance to go on and get into the ballot. There's no guarantee that you get into the ballot, you get a ticket. It seems to be done, I imagine, a kind of a lottery. Just like if you were running the Great North Run, you put your name down, which I'm sure John's doing this year, and you'll find out whether you can get a place or not. I mean, look, it was always going to be a very tough decision on how to distribute tickets. We think there's about 35,000, somewhere around that mark, going to each side. What was pleasing out of this, and it won't please everyone, is that the club liaised with the Newcastle United Supporters Trust. So there has been an element there from the fan side to say, well, we think this is the fairest way. And when you look at it, John, I don't envy the person making this decision. I mean, whatever they were going to do, people were going to be left disappointed.
Yes, there is. I mean, I think we're getting somewhere between 32 and 35,000 tickets. But if you think that every game we play, we sell out 50,000, the other 2,000, say, for the away fans, we sell out 50,000 now of people that go regularly. Now, all of those can't go to Wembley because we're only going to get between 32 and 35,000. So it is a horrendous job. I think it's a bit sad that, you only get 32, 33,000 for each of the 2 teams that are at Wembley. Yeah, and all these other people, I know it's a national competition and you want to look after people that are good to football during the year, etc., etc. But I think this final's all about Manchester United and Newcastle United. not about other people from Nottingham and Liverpool that aren't Geordies or Mackhams, not Mackhams, Mancunians that are going. But I think there should be more, and Newcastle fans should have more. And for that, and if they do that, Manchester United's got to have more, and that's fine. I think the percentages should be that much higher. But there's no way these are going to be gold. We are at the final, and we could sell out the whole of Wembley Stadium if they give with the whole stadium, because we have 50,000 people go every home game. Do you not think they could find a mate that would go with them to Wembley that doesn't go normally? We could sell 100,000. So there's never going to be satisfaction. There's always going to be huge disappointment. But hey, we're there. And let's have those problems, bring them on. We're there. We could be the fans of Southampton or Nottingham Forest. So near and yet so far. We know all about so near and so far. We're there. And that's the biggest thing. And yes, there's going to be problems. And yes, there's a short turnaround. But isn't it wonderful to have the problems?
It certainly is. And I'm sure wherever you'll be watching it, whether it be at Wembley, whether you'll make the trip down to London, regardless of whether you've got a ticket and you watch it somewhere down there, or whatever's happening here in the city centre, I imagine there'll be something going on. Or whether you're just at home, with your family and friends, you'll be back in the club and, you'll be having a jolly good time, especially if Newcastle United win. Let's go on to West Ham then, John. As we said, the visitors on Saturday. The key question is, who replaces Bruno Guimaraes in the middle of the park?
No, it's not. The quick question is, who replaces Joe Linton up front when he goes in the middle of the park? Because you've only got two alternatives for the middle of the park. You either go with Joe Linton or you go with Elliot Anderson. And I think eventually Elliot Anderson will become a big part of Newcastle United. I don't think it'll be from the start on Saturday. I think Joe Linton's a shoe-in to play in the middle of the park with Willock and Longstaff. Then it's a matter of who takes up the third position up front, wide left. And that is intriguing for me. And that will split Geordie opinion. And that is a question that will not be answered till the team sheet comes out at 4:30 because Eddie doesn't give it away. On the face of it, we've got four people up for that one position. Alan Saint-Maximin, quite obviously. Isaac, with a slight, perhaps, twitch to the tactical formation up front, but he could get the third position.
Well, if
Gordon, who's
just
been
on that though, John.
Sorry,
just on that. I mean, Isaac, we don't yet know whether he'll be available, do we? Because
we don't. But he is saying that he feels a lot better, and it was a bump on the head. Now, if he's not playing the bravado card, and he's saying I feel absolutely fine, and I got a clip. If he hasn't had full concussion, which would take him out of it medically. If he hasn't, he's available. So let us, for the moment, presume that the only thing we've heard is from him since Eddie immediately after the game. So if that's true, if everybody's available, and we know we've had injuries in training that nobody hears about, all of a sudden Manquillo is talked about as a reason we got Ashby when we didn't know Manquillo was injured. So if we look at the four, there's four choices for Saturday. There's Saint-Maximin, there's Isaac with a twitch and the tactics. There's Gordon, if you decided to gamble and start him straight away, which it would never have happened if Bruno wasn't suspended. And the other one, the rank outsider, is Murphy. So, but the choice will come from those four to play on the left-hand side. And it's going to be fascinating which one of those gets it.
Jason says Isaac should play on the left. If he's fit, I would play him on the left. The gamble then, though, is you don't have any recognised centre forward on the bench, which goes back to the transfer window. And did Newcastle leave themselves short? Which I will ask you in just a moment. However, I think he'll play Jacob Murphy. He really likes Jacob Murphy.
I was going to say that's a fun one because it's the rank outsider of the four in the betting, but it doesn't mean he won't, of course.
I think he'll play Jacob Murphy. I do think Joe Linton will drop into maybe that deeper role up, at least alongside Longstaff, who, I mean, Joe Linton's been unstoppable in recent games, but I think it'll be Murphy. I think Murphy will come out onto the left because, I just don't think St. Maximin. We spoke about this off camera, me now and the other day, about St. Maximin's performance on Tuesday, and we didn't really want to bring anyone down because it was such a wonderful moment. Newcastle off to Wembley, but I just felt there was moments of his performance, especially when Newcastle went down to 10 men, that he didn't really cover himself in much light, in the best of light. Whereas Murphy comes off the bench, and he does a bit more running about him, a bit more effort in my view. So I think he's probably played his way into starting against West Ham.
Very interesting, very interesting. I take the point you're making about Maxi. I've trunted on here in previous podcasts we've done, and some people have raised an eyebrow and haven't seen it. But when I look at him, he doesn't look a happy bunny. Now, I know you would say, well, he shouldn't be a happy bunny because he's never starting, etc., etc. But his body language all in. He doesn't look the bubbly man that he was once. Maybe that was because he was the number one man at St. James's Park then, I don't know. But when I saw him against Man City, before he kicked the ball against Man City, and it was absolutely magnificent, he looked the bubbly character, on the pitch in the warm-up, and you thought, he's ready to go, he's going to have it. He doesn't look that person anymore. Now, I know for certain that a lot of clubs have got into him. I know for certain, for example, that Spurs have had his ear during this transfer window. Not necessarily for the transfer to happen the window that's just closed, because it would have been difficult to move him, but in the summer. Now, I know for a fact Spurs have been in his ear. Now, also, it's said Arsenal and Milan have been in his ear. Now, is that turning his head? He never starts now, and these big clubs, some people would say as big as Newcastle, we wouldn't, but some others would, want him. Is his head being turned? Does he see his future has not been here? He doesn't look a happy bunny. And I'll tell you one thing, Andrew, if he doesn't get the nod, if Joe Linton is moved into midfield and he doesn't start against West Ham, either Isak does, or Gordon as the new guy does, or Murphy does, as you suggest, it'll knock him, and he will almost be told, won't he, in his own mind, your future's here is a second rater. Because we've got to remember that long term, and not too far in the distance, Gordon will nail that position on the left with Almiron on the right and Wilson. So St. Maximin's already going back in the ratings by us signing Gordon. Now, if he is not considered good enough to start on Saturday, and by the way, I'm not meaning he should, I'm just meaning if he's not, and only one man, as I always say, it matters, and that's Eddie Howe, that's going to send a huge message not only to him, but to all of us, as exactly where Maxi's future is at Newcastle. So this is a big team selection for Alan St. Maximin.
Let's read some of the comments here. So Shirley says, I think Isak should be brought on at the start of the match. He's always brought on too late. That is providing his match fit. The kind of phrase says St. Maximin had to play up front on his own as we're down to 10 men, cut him some slack, which is, I kind of said that at the start when I made the point that we didn't want to discuss it, at least on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. It was such a momentous occasion. But I just felt it had to be said there. The point had to be made. John says, I've always been a Maxi fan, but I'm coming out in the opinion that he might be too individualistic for Eddie's style of play. Roger says, I thought that the triple sub on the hour did initially add instant dynamism, yet it seemed ASM started to simmer too quickly. I do agree that when we saw those players come up off the bench and the board went up, there was a you could sense a kind of a buzz around the stadium because Eddie Howe was adding some quality to the pitch. It just obviously the red card then scuppered things ever so slightly. And there's also, there is a lot of people who think Maxi should start. Pete says just let Maxi play. Trul says ASM starting has always been better than him as a sub. And Peter says Maxi will start and Anthony Gordon will come on in the second half. When I actually, John, originally asked this question, I totally forgot about Anthony Gordon. It's been one of those weeks. And then you reminded me of it. and you may want to go back and just realise the smile on my face because I've totally forgot about him. But what a player I think he's going to be. I know there's debate about his attitude and what have you, but I think he'll be fine. He'll settle perfectly. You want that kind of needle in your team.
He's going to be the left winger, if, in old-fashioned terms, in the very, very near future. It might just be that Saturday comes a bit quick for him because he hasn't played a lot recently at Everton, and it would be easier to introduce him from the bench. And it could well be a St. Maximum start and Gordon coming on. But we have got that situation with Gordon coming on. But we've talked here about who would play up front, and I've talked about being worried about St. Maximum in terms of his body language isn't great, etc., etc. I've got to admit, amongst all the elation, and I've got nothing but elation because Newcastle are at Wembley, and I've got nothing but credit for each and every single Newcastle United player, but I remain worried about Callum Wilson. I think Callum Wilson's not yet the Callum Wilson we have known all the time he's been at St. James's Park. And we have always prided the fact that in the past, whenever Callum Wilson's been out injured, he has come back into the team and unbelievably hasn't needed matches to get up to pace. He has come back in the team and almost hit the ground running every time he's come back in. This time, he looks strangely lethargic. It's nothing to do with, I think, with him, his mind like Maxi. Maxi's confused about whether he's got a future here, whether his future's elsewhere. Callum Wilson's future's all here. But he isn't. He hasn't got that pace he's shown. He's not running the challenge. He's not getting behind. The ball's not sticking with him, and he hasn't got that clinical ice-cold finish. He is now gone from October the 29th without a goal. I mean, and he's a regular goal scorer. I mean, when in his day, when Malcolm MacDonald was centre forward for Newcastle, the only time he had a similar period of never scoring goals was in the summer because he wasn't playing. But Wilson, he's gone double figures matches without a goal, and he hasn't scored since October 29th. And Newcastle, if they have a problem going into this West Ham match, it surely isn't at the back, where Pope and the back four are the best in the division. It is in midfield, despite the fact we haven't got Bruno. It's up top because both our top goal scorers, Almiron with 9 and Wilson with 6, have stopped scoring. They've both hit a dry period. Wilson hasn't scored since October 29th. Miggy hasn't scored in his last 6.5 games. The half game was when he went on as a sub at Sheffield Wednesday in the FA Cup, and hasn't looked like scoring. Neither of them have looked like scoring. And if you take your 2 goal scorers have stopped scoring, and the third position up front is up for grabs on Saturday, it's going to be a reserve, said in quotes, because it isn't going to be Joe Linton. It's going to be a second choice. Then we need goals from those front 3. We are struggling there in terms of the finish. All right, somebody like Sean Longstaff come up and wasn't that wonderful and magnificent. But, you can't expect him to do it again on Saturday and et cetera, et cetera. Who's going to get the goals? That, if I'm looking for utopia, and I'm grateful for what I've got, but of course we're looking for utopia, then I'm looking for goal scorers again.
We mentioned the transfer window, and I said I was going to ask you about it. Now, it finished with John Shelby heading to Nottingham Forest. Obviously, Chris Wood had followed him and had started that kind of journey. He joined it a week or so earlier. Newcastle United signed Anthony Gordon, they signed House and Ashbury, but didn't manage to get anybody else in. Now, Eddie Howe was asked about this after the cup win, the semi-final win, and he said, no window is perfect. I don't think this window has been perfect for us. That's just the reality of the situation. I think we've signed 2 really talented young players and really pleased with those signings. Disappointing to lose Chris Wood and John Joe Shelby, but we have to respect the players' wishes as well. It's not always about what the club wants. You have to look at things from a position of everybody's needs at once. But maybe light in a couple of areas, we do have a lot of quality within the squad. So I think everything how said there, everyone will agree with. We are light. I think in an ideal world, you wouldn't have lost Wood and Shelby without replacements coming in for both. Tuesday night, though, was probably we spoke about how you one injury, you one suspension away from potentially facing a crisis in those positions. And Newcastle's luck, they got one suspension in one of them positions and potentially an injury, which sees Isak missed this Saturday, in the other. It kind of just reaffirmed just how light they are in both positions, i.e., central of midfield and up front.
Yeah, there's absolutely no question about that whatsoever. And Eddie Howe says no transfer window is ever perfect. With respect, Eddie, I think the one last January was perfect for us. We were going down. We signed a barrel load of players, including Byrne and Pope and Trippier, and it worked magnificently. That was a perfect window for us in January. It was an unbelievable window because you normally can't get people in January. This window has fallen short, and it's only fallen short because we were left without centre forward and midfield cover, and that is absolutely not ideal. I wasn't, I said on the last podcast we done, and I'll repeat it now, against per se Wood and Shelby going, because I think they are yesterday's men. I don't think they're up to the standard of the current Newcastle or the future Newcastle whatsoever. And if Shelby was still here, I'm not certain he would have been up to it on Saturday, physically and everything else. I mean, when did he last play? He hasn't played this season in the league, and he didn't play at the end of last season. Shelby was not fit enough. The tragedy is not letting Shelby go. The tragedy is not getting somebody in. And I'm not, I'm not too upset at seeing Wood go, because I've said who will score the goals with Wilson and Miggy like they are. The answer certainly would not have been Wood in the Premier League. That's for certain. The trouble was not them two leave for me, not them two leaving, but not getting replacements in. Possibly more so in the case of the midfield, because we have got Isak. Hopefully, we've got Isak on Saturday, because the concussion was not concussion. But if we haven't, we've certainly got him the next game. But we talked about how short we were in midfield, and that's come home to roost with Bruno being out for 3 games. We are down to our bare bones. The team, the lads we play against West Ham will be the full complement of senior midfield players, because the only other one's Elliot Anderson, who I'm a great believer in, and it's going to be a big star, but it's early for him. So we're very short there.
Great to see him, though, involved on Tuesday. And actually, I thought
that's why he come on.
Yeah, but it was a really good sign as well, because at that point, it's a crucial moment in the game when he comes on. I know he was only on for a few minutes, so Newcastle, though, knew they had to defend. So he comes off with Jacob Murphy, who only came on 20-odd minutes.
I was going to say, you're talking about Murphy playing on Saturday. The sub was subbed on Tuesday.
yeah, I get that. And, it would be interesting. It would be interesting to know why, but I assume it's because Ellie Henderson, he thought maybe had a bit more legs about him or what have you. But
he shouldn't have been short of legs. He was on about 25 minutes, wasn't he?
Yeah, but from an Anderson point of view, I think it's another big hint to say, well, you haven't gone out on loan this January, go on there. You're only going to get a couple of minutes, but to be thrown on in that situation in the most important few moments of Newcastle's season.
Of course, that's why he was sent on, Andrew. You're right. That's why he was sent on. You're going to be an important part. This is Eddie thinking quickly. Bruno's gone off. That means we are right up against it in midfield. Here's a kid that he might have to call on in those 3 games. He'll certainly be on the bench at Wembley, and who knows when he's needed in the run-in. Get him on now to show, hey, you're part of this, by the way. It's like the photograph at the end of the game. Get them on the photograph, get them on the pitch. And also, and it's very clever from this point of view, just think of this, what it means to Anderson on the final whistle. He's a Geordie on the pitch, the same as Longstaff, the same as Byrne, the same as... So he was on the pitch when Newcastle officially got into Wembley, and he's a Geordie lad. That's why he was brought on. If Bruno hadn't gone off, I doubt if Elliot would have got on. But it was a clever thing to do, in my opinion, to say, hey, I haven't forgotten about you, pal. You're an important part of this squad. Get out there and have your moment.
Yeah, definitely, especially with the sign of Anthony Gordon as well, who I think Gordon actually would probably be just settled in like Eddie Howe did with the likes of Bruno. I can't see him starting on Saturday, but then every time I try and predict what Eddie Howe does, he does the exact opposite. So goodness knows, probably will start Anthony Gordon on Saturday. A few more comments then here, John, from listeners. Les says, I think Anderson could be like Longstaff gets better with a run of games. We have Derek saying he thought Callum Wilson played well on Tuesday, should have had a penalty, which no one has ever mentioned. Defender pulled him down. And this question, point from John. I'll be intrigued to see what you have to say, John. No, sorry, it's from John Askew. John's not asking himself a question for those listening on the podcast. John Askew says, from seemingly nowhere, the squad has quite a bit of depth, judging by the bench in recent games. That could be crucial. Do you agree with that?
It's quite a statement, and I know where John is coming from, and I know when you look at the bench and you think that Isaac's on it, and you think that Gordon is now on it, and Maxi's on it, and you think that is quite strong. But no, there's 9 people go on the bench, and the bench theoretically has been weakened because Shelby's gone and Wood's gone and Darlow's gone, though we've got more than enough goalkeepers. So it will have to be deeper than it is now next season when we're in Europe, that's for certain. Things have got to happen in the summer because the squad isn't deep enough not to handle Premier League, FA Cup, League Cup, and Europe next season, and we will be in all 4 of those competitions. We haven't enough strength and depth, even with the young boy Ian Ashby as well as Gordon. That will be strengthened in the summer. But whether we like it or not, the hand we're dealt is the players we've got now, and between now and the end of the season, and this is the most crucial part of the season, we have won nothing yet, but we can win the League Cup and Champions League qualification between now and the end of the season. They are 2 huge prizes, and we'll have to win them with what we've got in-house now. Will it be enough? We're about to find out. I would like to think so, but I would like God to deal us a good hand with injuries, etc. And I would like people to have looked at what happened to Bruno and say, I'm not going to make that mistake as well, because that was self-inflicted, you know. But it doesn't just hurt Bruno, who I love. It's hurt the club and the team. Over these next 3 matches, we'll find out how much. And over the cup final, we'll find out how much rustiness sitting on the sidelines has hit Bruno. We don't want any more self-inflicted wounds like that, because this is the big part of the season. We've set everything up, Andrew, but we've got out yet. We've gotten out yet, but it's set up. We could have the League Cup and the Champions League, but at the moment we've got neither. But it's tantalising because we're in a position to get both.
And as you said earlier in the show, you know, the season is still a lot to play for other than the Cup. And we know as well that Eddie Howe's concentration is fully on West Ham on Saturday. He already said it in the post-match press conference after Tuesday night's victory that all he's thinking about is West Ham. That's all he's thinking about, because that's the next game. That's where the 3 points are. And of course,
I think he's fibbing a little bit as well, because he can have a little moment at 3 o'clock in the morning when he thinks of Wembley and has a little dance from the bottom of the bed. That would make him bad.
But you know, I think we know from previous Eddie Howe, he is game by game. He doesn't look too far ahead, and that's a good thing, because you know, you win the next 3 games, you go in full of momentum, and that's the key. The key word is momentum.
But can we also remember, Andrew, these 3 games aren't a warm-up for Wembley. These 3 games get with the Champions League.
No, 100%.
It's not a warm-up for Wembley. These 3 games can decide what next season is all about.
Yeah, 100%. And West Ham's a really interesting one. 16th in the league. They've got 18 points. They're 1 point above the drop zone. They won their last league game against Everton, who of course are down there with them fighting for survival. They beat Derby in the FA Cup. They have lost 7 out of their last 10 though, and haven't won in their last 8 on the road. Newcastle, of course, St James's Park. It's a fortress. They're unbeaten in 15. The downside is they're not scoring too many goals. The upside is they're still keeping clean sheets, obviously, the Tuesday aside. This is a game, John, that if you are qualifying for the top 4, you're winning. You have to win this game, don't you?
There's no question at all. I mentioned earlier in this program, Andrew, that we've had 3 0-0 draws, which is why we only got 6 points out of 12. Do you think a 0-0 draw on Saturday is good enough? No, it isn't. It's good enough when you've won the last 6, but it's not good enough under the current circumstances. In this West Ham team, if you are going to finish in the Champions League, you beat West Ham at home. Because West Ham last season finished 7th top in the Europa League semi-finals. They then went out and bought players, particularly strikers, and then a relegation fight. And, I mean, they have fallen off the end of the cliff. And Moyes is desperate for results. Now, they've got very dangerous individuals that we must be aware of, because Antonio seems to have got his head screwed on again. I think it was a little bit turned by the fact he could get a good move before the transfer deadline, and that hasn't happened. And Jared Bourne was suffering desperately on his own admission through being left behind at the World Cup when he thought he was going to get into the squad. Both suffered as a consequence. Both scored to put them through in the FA Cup against Derby. Antonio is difficult to handle. Bourne is a good player. Declan Rice will be back in the side, having been rested, and he's having his last West Ham hurrah before he joins a Champions League club in the summer. So they have got individuals that will punish us if we aren't on blob. But we still have the meanest defence in the Premier League, and we have a fortress at home, and it's crucial to us. What will I be doing on Saturday? I sat on Tuesday night because we scored in 4 minutes and we're already 1-0 ahead. I sat in total bliss on Tuesday because we were going to Wembley. I could sit back and get a cigar out and a glass of champagne and enjoy the hour and a half. I will sit for an hour and a half this Saturday tea time saying, oh, we're going to get the goal. Oh, we're going to get the goal. When is the goal coming? It's 50 minutes, it's 60 minutes, it's 70 minutes. We've got to get this goal, because that's going to be the crucial thing. It's okay keeping them out, but a note, yet another note, it's not good enough. We've got to score. And the sooner we do that and put all our nerves to bed, the better. But we can't say another must-win, can we? We spent all last season saying there were must-win games, so we weren't relegated. We've said that there must-win games all this season because we want to go in the Champions League, and we're still saying it, but it is must-win.
Yeah, well, it's better to be saying must-win in this situation than it was last season. That's
absolutely right. But it is must-win, Andrew.
Yeah, scary thing as well that we probably, whatever game this time was last year, we'd probably be saying it's a must-win for survival, and here we are talking about a must-win to qualify for the top 4. It's still
frightening, isn't it?
Think about it. But on that, West Ham, was seen to be the side alongside Leicester that we're going to gate crash the top 4. We're going to upset the established order. They finished 7th last season. Are West Ham a kind of a warning, to Newcastle to make sure that it happens, and your plan of crashing the top 4, make sure that you follow through on that plan, because it can easily, the progress you've made can easily be swept away from
football's so kind and so cruel almost at the same time. And they are both clubs, you're absolutely right, Andrew. Leicester and West Ham are warning to the current Newcastle United hierarchy, because when we saw Leicester win the Premier League title and then win the FA Cup and win the Community Shield, we're saying, isn't this sensational? Isn't it wonderful? What are they doing this season? They're in a relegation fight. When we see West Ham have 2 successive seasons of finishing in the top single figures, 7th or 9th, and go to a Europa League semi-final, they're saying, isn't Moyes a genius? Hasn't he refound what he had at Everton and lost at Manchester United? And what are they doing this season? The same as Leicester, in a relegation fight. And they both splashed cash on signing players. So it can turn as quick. The minute you think you've made it, you haven't. The minute you think you made it, you haven't. As long as you're striving to make it, you've got a chance. And that is a warning. Newcastle aren't home and host for the next 4 years because they've got Saudi owners, a very good manager, and a clever transfer policy. They're home and host until the next transfer window. That is all. It can happen, and we've seen it happen to a lesser extent with West Ham and Leicester, and we have got to remember that.
And also, though, West Ham kind of a nod to sticking with your manager. And I know he's only won his last league games, only won 2 out of the last 10. But I think David Moyes is a decent manager, and I think he will turn it around at West Ham.
Well, that's what they say about Brendan Rodgers as well, isn't it?
So is it another nod to maybe a more, I don't know if sensible approach is the right word, but a more, I'm going to use it anyway, a more sensible approach from owners not to quickly press the fire button when things get a little bit uneasy in the boardroom?
Yeah, I think that goes without saying. It's very knee-jerk, and it's very easy to just keep sacking managers. Everton have kept doing that, and look where it's got them. Further in the clouds than they've ever been. So, yes, of course. But, hey, I tell you what, I'm not even contemplating that. I've contemplated that for 20 years. I'm now having to think about that, so I'm not going to, and it's not our concern anymore. Isn't that lovely?
It is. And just quickly then, before I ask for your score prediction, Derek asks you, John, Bruno and Isak versus Paqueta and Scamacca, who got the best deal? So Paqueta, obviously the other Brazilian Newcastle was strongly linked to, joined West Ham last summer, and Scamacca, who joined from Serie A for big money, hasn't quite hit the ground running. I mean, from my point of view, I think Bruno's probably been the best sign out of all of 4 of them. Isak is a little similar to Scamacca just because we haven't really seen much of him, hasn't really managed to do too much. But I would argue Isak's probably done more than Scamacca, despite being injured for long parts of it. Paqueta's probably just been a little bit quiet. I mean, I haven't watched too much of him. I don't know if you have, John, but I would assume you're going to agree with me and say Newcastle, based on the season so far, probably got the better deal out of those pairings.
Oh, well, I would just say go and have a look at the league table. That'll tell you who got the better deal. I mean, there's no comparison. You name me a better player, a better signing than Bruno, and you would probably say Trippier or Byrne or Botman, who we've already got, and Pope. All the great signs of value for money signs have been Newcastle United one. I mean, Bruno's been a sensational signing, even though he's a naughty boy at the moment and deserves his bum smacked for the other night. But he's been sensational. And Isak has got all the potential to be sensational. There's no comparison between our 2 and their 2. But we've got to continue in that vein. And we've got to continue in that vein in the transfer market in the summer. And I think we will, because our record in the transfer market's been excellent. And you know what? The greatest hope you've got of Anthony Gordon being good is what the players this regime have signed have been like, because they've been terrific. So that's And if Eddie Howe and the scouting staff wanted Gordon as much as they did, then you've got to feel that he's going to make it the same as the rest of them.
100%. Derek informs me that it was a rhetorical question. Well, you didn't state that, Derek, so I didn't know. So I apologise, but you've given us a little something to talk about anyway.
Well done, Derek. You're absolutely correct. There's no little smack there for my friend Andrew, but I'm
not a mind reader.
I'm glad it was rhetorical, because otherwise I thought, what sort of question's that?
I thought he was just sparking a bit of debate. I do apologise, Derek. John, how is this one going to go then? Are Newcastle going to get a win?
Newcastle are going to win. It's going to be harder because Bruno's not there. There's absolutely no question whatsoever about that. It is going to be harder. And while they're in difficulty, they've got some good players, individual players like Antonio, like Jared Bowen, and like Declan Rice. So let's not think we just turn up, they roll over, and we come away with 3 points. It is absolutely crucial, because we've had 3 0-0 draws, so we'll get back to winning ways. And when we got the one win with those 3 0-0 draws. It was almost a 0-0 draw as well, wasn't it? It was Fulham in about the 89th minute when Isaac scored. So we were almost on 4 0-0 draws. So we've got to win. It's where the goals come from. I think we will win by a single goal ratio, and it might even be 2-1. They might even score. We lost Nick Pope's record the other night, but he's still got clean sheets in the Premier League, but maybe they'll score. You can't keep them out for the rest of the season where no team will score against us ever again. It may be 2-1. It may be 1-0. I think it'll only be a goal in it, but I think Newcastle win. But I think my nails, which are looking beautiful after Tuesday night, might look a little bit bitten by the time it comes to having my tea on Saturday night.
Yeah, I would like to think they're going to win, but just based on their recent performances, and I think obviously the loss of Bruno, potentially the loss of Isaac, I'm going to go for a draw. I don't think they're going to lose it, but I just wonder if they've got enough in them.
You sourpuss, we've just got to Wembley and you're talking about Newcastle drawing with a team at the bottom of the Premier League when we need 3 points for the Champions League. You're always the guy with your pot half full, and all of a sudden it's half empty. I'm surprised at you, naughty boy. And I'm hoping when I talk to you next week, I can bring that up and you're not saying to me, I told you you would.
Well, I wouldn't want to be saying I told you so, John. I would love you to be telling me that I was wrong with my prediction. I would love them to beat West Ham, but I don't know. I think, are they going to be a bit tired? What the hope is that the adrenaline and the the celebration of Tuesday night carries them on through. The loss of Bruno is massive. Callum Wilson down in the dumps is also going to have an impact. But saying that, he does like the game against West Ham, does Callum Wilson. So fingers crossed.
The key's going to be, Andrew, the key's going to be, can we score the goals?
Yeah.
If we can't, it's the draw you're talking about.
And
if we can, we win.
Yeah, well, it's as simple as that. Football's a very simple game to say, isn't it? Darren says 2-0 on Saturday, and that's where we'll sign off with a bit of optimism. We'll go with Darren's 2-0 score prediction for Newcastle on Saturday. This has been the Everything is Black and White podcast. Do remember to hit subscribe and follow through the podcast provider or on YouTube. And again, I'll just point you in the direction of our supplement for the League Cup final. I've popped it on the screen there for those watching live. I mean, John, I don't know if that's the first time you've seen it. It looks pretty good though, doesn't it?
Looks absolutely terrific. Up for the cup looks the best part of the lot. Those words, I've waited a long time to say that, but the front spread, the paper on the front sums up totally what Newcastle United are about. One for all and all for one, and there they all are. May that last over into the Champions League and into a victory at Wembley, and another souvenir coming out saying we won the cup. That'll do for me.
I think everyone listening and watching. So I'll pop the link into the comments on how to get that supplement. In the meantime, head over to chroniclelive.co.uk to keep up to date with all the latest Newcastle United news, including all the reaction to the ticket details for the cup final and, of course, Eddie Howe's press conference ahead of West Ham, which will take place on Friday morning. For me and John, it's been a pleasure as always. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care.